Well, Mississippi State fans, brace yourselves. Draft decisions are in, and one surprise departure might shake up things more than expected.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm Jaron Spor, national college football writer of Athlon Sports. Landon isn't able to join me today. I'll explain all that here in a little bit. But on today's show, we've got a packed show. We got some recruiting updates. We got a whole week to recap. We, of course, have our top dog of the week. I will give Landon's top dog of the week as well. But when to first got to start off things, apologizing again. I posted on YouTube, also on Twitter, that we weren't able to post today's show at 6 a.m. like we usually do. That was because, as most people know, I got married, 2 weekends ago now. So last week was my honeymoon. We were traveling back on Sunday. We ended up spending 30 hours in an airport or an airplane straight. So we didn't get in until late last night. I'm jet lagged. You can probably hear all the sinus stuff in me right now. It wasn't a great travel experience on the way back, but we had a great time at the wedding and also on the honeymoon. That's why I wasn't available yesterday. Landon then had some things come up last minute. Some of them were like kind of family emergency type stuff. So he wasn't able to put out a podcast either. He's at work today. I thankfully took off because I knew in advance I'd probably be jet lagged. So I'm able to at least record this here early in the morning or somewhat early in the morning while trying to catch up on some sleep. But yeah, so apologize for that. Going forward the rest of the week, everything should be back to normal with us both back, with our normal schedules now. But a lot of things happened this past week. Obviously, last week's show, we talked about it. We had to pre-record all those shows because of me being gone. And so what we did was we broke down every single position group and the coaches, kind of talked about the season a little bit as well. I believe that was on Friday's episode. So obviously there was a lot of stuff that ended up happening last week that we weren't able to talk about because of me being gone. So we wanted to get into that today. We've talked about this a little bit. I believe it's August 1st is the deadline for players to sign their contracts that were drafted in the MLB Draft. And so that has started to happen. Players have announced either they were coming back, as we saw with one of the Parker brothers announced he was coming back. We talked about that a while back. But some have also announced that they are signing and going. And some of them obviously didn't have eligibility. So I wanted to go through some of these players that, have announced that they have signed deals. Landon Harmon was one, signed with the Nationals. He was a Mississippi State recruit. So he did sign $2.5 million with the Nationals. He was selected in the third round. So he's gone. Evan Ciari's the big one. He officially signed with the Rangers organization. He was someone Landon and I kind of, have been talking about, not really thinking he was going to go pro and thought he could be a big contributor to next year's team. And that would be, obviously massive for Mississippi State because they need someone that could be an ace. That's the one thing that we feel like this team is missing is a surefire ace. We think they have potential at several players rather to be the ace, but they don't have like a surefire. Okay, your ace is back. We feel good about that. Obviously, Pico, we talked about, he's gone, so they don't really have a surefire. Okay, we know this is the ace coming into this year, and so Evan was a guy that we thought, okay, this could be the guy. He's got potential, especially the way he ended last season. Well, he's off to the major league, signing his deal with the Rangers. Hunter Hines has signed his deal with the Nationals. So big congrats to all these guys that ended up signing deals. Jacob Pruitt signed with the Phillies organization. And then let's see. I know there was one more I had on the list. Well, actually, there's a couple. Carson Ligon, obviously, he announced, or they announced that he's officially signed with the Blue Jays. But we expected this one. but it became official. It became official that Friday, right before my wedding, actually. So we haven't been able to discuss it much, but JoJo Parker officially signed with the Blue Jays as well. $6.2 million deal. Obviously, those that don't know him, he's Mississippi High School shortstop, consensus best all-around prep hitter in the MLB draft by a lot of people. So they feel like he could be a plus at bat with 25 homer power. He has good approach, solid arm for left side of the field, of the infield. Obviously, Mississippi State commit. So he announced officially that he signed. And so the big ones, in my opinion, are Evan and JoJo. Obviously, JoJo was the one that we expected, especially with how high he was projected and then went. He's probably not coming. And there was the interview we talked about with the brothers where they kind of said that they were preparing to, for the first time in their lives, not play together. And so that's when you first started realizing, okay, they're definitely going pro, because otherwise they wouldn't be preparing for that. If JoJo was like, I don't care where I get drafted, let's go to college together, because they had both committed to Mississippi State, obviously. And so that one's not really surprising. It's obviously a big loss because he's a great player. So he's a guy that, while we didn't think he would actually ever come to Starkville, if he did come to Starkville, that this team is a legit, golly, maybe even the favorite to win the national championship. And speaking of that, I wanted to get into that a little bit. Baseball America put out their way too early top 25, and Mississippi State's number 4 in the country. So that tells you right there that, and that's without JoJo Parker coming. That was already announced. Evan Ciari was announced already at that point, and they have UCLA ahead of them, LSU and Texas. Obviously LSU makes a lot of sense. They just won the national championship. Texas was really good last year. Kind of, obviously they faltered down the stretch, but those make sense. If Evan is there and JoJo's there, I mean, this team might be preseason number 1 in the way too early, and that's again way too early. So it's not their preseason number 4. We'll have to wait and see what they end up finishing. But those were 2 losses, and obviously would impact that ranking a little bit. And then, the other guy that they, there was a chance that would come was Landon Harmon, but obviously he left too. And he was a, Mississippi State recruit. He was a guy that could have also played a factor in moving that ranking up, but also played a factor in possibly being the ace this year if he ended up playing well. So they now have to rely on Tomas Valencias really to take that step, in my opinion. I know there's some guys under them and then that could take that jump and become that ace, but I feel like Tomas is the guy that has the most potential. And we talked about that for a while. His potential is there. He just hasn't had the full level of production yet. And he was a true freshman last year, so it's not expected that he would, but there was some things in his game last year that it's like, okay, if things start to click, this could be your ace moving forward, at Virginia. Then obviously he decides to follow O'Connor to Mississippi State. And so now you just hope that those things start to come out and materialize. You hope that he becomes that ace, because if he can, and Mississippi State does find that ace, I still think they have a very deep pitching staff. And so I think they still have a very good team next year. They just have to find an absolute ace that they can throw out against the other team's best, and you still have a great shot at winning. Or, just at the point where it's like they win when that guy's out there. They're not losing with him out there. And so obviously it's not like softball where you can pitch the same guy over and over. So you have to have a deep staff. And I feel like they do have that. They just need that one dominant one that's like, okay, we know when we throw him out, he's our ace. He's our best pitcher. He's one of the best in the country. He's going to go get us a win. And then after that, we'll see what happens the other games. And with their depth that they've now added, you feel pretty confident that they'll do well. And so, but Evan is still lost there, because at worst, if Valencias didn't take that step and Evan either didn't take a step or, maybe if he did, it was a minor step, those are 2 really good starting pitchers still. No, you don't have the surefire ace, but you have 2 very solid pitchers, starting pitchers, and you're feeling really good about things. Obviously, that didn't work out. So we'll see what ends up happening for the season. Still, a lot of expectations. Again, they're still preseason, way too early preseason ranked number 4. And so they're still going to be should be a very good baseball team next year, and a team that should compete for the World Series. I mean, we've talked about it. That's their upside. They have World Series potential. We truly believe that. And so, yeah, I mean, they have all the makings to do it. Now they just got to go out there and they got to prove it. And hopefully someone steps up, becomes the ace. And, they end up having the season that we think they can have. All right, coming up next. They also got a really big commitment, Mississippi State did, on the offensive line. We got to talk about that and how much that's going to impact the upcoming seasons. And we got to brag about Phil Loadholt a little bit too, some more. I know we've done it a lot on these shows, but we got to do some more. That's coming up next. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing money, you're also building wealth. One of my favorite things about Monarch Money, and I've talked about this many times, I didn't realize how much I was using delivery service for food. And there's a lot of great ones out there, and, it made it really easy. A lot of people started using it, especially during COVID, and it's just made it convenient. We even used it just Sunday night. We got home, we hadn't eaten all day, we were exhausted, it was late, we didn't want to go out and get food. Delivery, bring it to the food. We got up this morning, didn't want to get out. We're still jet lagged, we're still tired, we're both dealing with sinus stuff. We don't want to deal with that. We had food delivered. So we did use it twice, but we have been good about not using it for a while. And that was one thing Monarch Money helped us with and has showed us how much we use it. Streaming service is another one for a lot of people. You just don't realize how much you're using streaming services and how many you're using. And some that you don't even use, but you're still paying for and you don't realize it. So that helps you as well. But take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so Mississippi State also added a football commitment in the 2026 class. That's Cameron Thompson. He's a 6'3", 300-pound offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman. He's from Jenkins High School, which is in Savannah, Georgia. He's listed as a 3-star on Rivals on 3. They're together, and then 3-star on 24/7 Sports. He's ranked as the 157th ranked interior offensive line. 24/7 Sports has him a top 100 interior offensive line. So when you look at all that, you're like, really? Why are we hyped up for this guy? He's a 3-star. He's a lower level 3-star. ESPN doesn't even have him ranked. Like, why are we hyped up for this guy? Well, glad you asked, because we're going to talk about it. The reason why, and I've talked about it many times, I look at who has offered. I don't care what your ranking is. And no, I'm not a rankings don't matter guy. I do think rankings matter. And the proof is the teams that are the highest in the rankings and recruiting year in and year out are also the teams that are the top of the country most of the time. Every now and then you'll have someone that pays for big classes struggle. Saw that with Texas A&M. But overall, usually those are your top of the top tier. Well, let's look at his offers. He's got obviously Mississippi State, Georgia Tech, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Louisville, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, West Virginia, Auburn, NC State, UCF, and then Georgia never offered but was interested. That's your group of 4 programs. But there's also several group of 5, top group of 5 programs. That was your Power 4 program. Sorry, there are several top group of 4 programs like Coastal Carolina, USF, Tulane, even Eastern Carolina. Charlotte's had some good years that were interested as well. And so, going into his commitment, I believe it was yesterday, or it was either yesterday he committed or Saturday he committed. But going into that commitment, Georgia Tech was perceived as the favorite. 47.3% had Georgia Tech as the pick. Makes a lot of sense. I'm from Savannah, Georgia. Gonna stay home. But Phil Loadholt did it again. He pulled a guy with a ton of potential, great size. Again, 6'3", 300 pounds. That's big time size. And he was able to pull and get him here. And unless Rivals website is wrong, he never visited Mississippi State. He took 2 unofficial visits, one to Georgia, one to Georgia Tech. That's all of his visits. He didn't take a lot of visits, didn't come visit Mississippi State. Again, unless the Rivals is wrong and he did take it and we're missing it. And I will say they don't track like camps and stuff. So if he camped there, it's not listed. But that's massive. That is huge. And I think he actually did camp here now that I'm thinking about it. I'm still dealing with the travel and everything, but I think he might have did camp at Mississippi State. But anyways, that is huge for Phil Loadholt to take a guy out of Georgia and get him to come to Mississippi State. And again, I know people's thoughts are he's a 3-star. Like, who cares? It's not that big deal. He's not a high recruit. He's not a 4 or 5-star. Like, these guys aren't going to cut it. These are the guys that you develop into really good players and can be really good players, guys that have potential. One thing that I see a lot of the offensive linemen, I mean, sometimes you just have some freak athletes that are 4 or 5, like 5 stars, and it's like, yeah, no brainer. But a lot of like the top ones, it feels like, especially interior offensive line, because they're kind of undervalued, I believe, in the ranking system. It kind of feels like they're usually like these 3-star guys that just either had big size and then you made them better mechanically, or they were mechanic freaks. They were great at mechanics, and then you had to add all this size to them, and they became good players. It feels like that's like typical. And we even see it in the NFL draft. Like guards, like sometimes you'll get these guards that go first round, but they usually don't. Like, and same with centers. Like, you might have this elite center go first round, but overall, usually they're second, third rounders, fourth rounders, and these are your top centers in the league. I mean, Jason Kelsey was like a 6th-round pick. Like, and I know he had some size issues, and so that one's easy to say, but like Creed Humphrey is one of the top ones. He was a 3-star, and he was like a 3rd-round pick or 2nd-round pick or something like that. And so, and he had a great college career and still was a 2nd-round pick. And so it always feels like these interior offense lines kind of get overlooked, and so they kind of push down farther down the rankings than they really need to be. But this is a guy, again, and this is what you're going to get at Mississippi State until you start producing on the field, is you're going to get a guy with a lot of potential. Maybe he has great size, maybe he has great mechanics, it's just something, and then you develop everything else. It seems like Phil Loadholt's strategy is, let me get the person with the size, and then I'll develop everything else. I will develop the mechanics. I want the people that already have the size and are ready from a size standpoint to compete in the SEC, and then I will handle the mechanics. And that makes a lot of sense too. Some people take it the other way. I got a guy that's great on mechanics. I can get him here and bulk him up with a college training system. I'll do that. I want him to have great mechanics. Well, and sometimes guys just don't have the frame to put on the weight. And then there's other ways where guys were big in high school because they really weren't committed to training. And so then when they get to the training program, they add weight, and it's bad weight, and they just never become what they can become. And so we never know. You never know ahead of time what's going to happen. But that's just another big win for Phil Loadholt, in my opinion, because of all the teams that were after him. Again, Georgia Tech was a perceived favorite. I believe Auburn was in his Final Four, and we know what Auburn can do. Obviously, they're not having a great run right now in recruiting, but we know what they've done the previous 2 years. So they're doing well, Auburn is, and you beat them out. So I just think that's hats off to Phil Loadholt, hats off to the offensive staff, the vision that, again, they keep putting out and people are buying into. And again, when you go 2-10, it's hard to do that. It's hard to get people to buy into a vision after going 2-10, but that's what they're doing. And they're getting guys that, yes, it's going to be a process. Like, I would be shocked if Cameron Thompson came in next year and started. Like, it's probably you look down 3 years from now and, oh, wow, he turned out to be a really good offensive guard, whatever. So we'll see what ends up happening, but, hats off to Phil Loadholt and for, snagging another really good raw prospect. So, all right, coming up next, we got our top dogs of the week. I've got Landon's. He did send me that, and so then I will go with mine as well. That's coming up next. Well, we've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, Gametime Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. If you ever wonder what your seat will actually look like before you buy, the app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. That's my favorite part. Always love doing that. Did that recently. Father-in-law was buying tickets for the Cowboys-Chiefs Thanksgiving Day game. We used Gametime to look at the panoramic seat views, find out exactly where our seats would be. Also, with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. There's no hidden fees. How frustrating has that been? You go to checkout, you think your ticket's $100, then after checkout, it's an extra $70. So now it's $170. That's frustrating, but that doesn't happen at Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, well, thanks for being Locked On Mississippi State, your first listen every single day, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, I promised that Landon did send me his top dog of the week. So let me actually read it. I told him I would read it, and I wouldn't just try to recite off memory. So he said he's got a weird one. So let me see what he said on this one. It was about the fans. Okay, so here we go. He said that he's going with he's giving it up to the fans, and they're your top dog of the week because we have made it through the toughest part of the sports schedule, and fall practice is about to start up. So you've made it through it, and that's why you're the top dog of the week to Landon. Okay, so there you go. I would agree with that. We've all made it through it. Although I could argue right now is the hardest part, just because fall camp starts on Thursday. Assistant coaches will be available for interviews on Tuesday, by the way. So we'll be able to talk about that later this week. And then I think Levy's available. I don't think he's available Tuesday. I think he's available Thursday when practice starts up. So we'll get to talk about that. I think it's actually the hardest part. I understand what he's saying because it does kind of stink right now because there's no games or anything. I think the hardest part is August leading up to the first games because you're anticipating it. Practices are going on and you're ready to go. But no, that's a good one. I just have to give it to Phil Loadholt again because I bragged about him all last segment, so I'm not going to go on and on about it this time around. But to be able to pull a guy with all those offers, one of them was a Georgia school, another Georgia school, obviously Georgia was interested. Be able to pull him out of that state to come to Mississippi State and continue to sell the vision in only his second year being an offensive line coach. And I know he did. People are going to look at Colorado last year and be like, oh, the offensive line is terrible. It was actually quite a bit better than the year before because of the year before it might have been the worst in college football history. And so he showed improvement in just his first year as a coach last year at Colorado. And so you hope that he can show that first or that jump at this year because last year Mississippi State had one of the worst offensive lines it's ever had. I don't think it's going to be some massive jump, but I do expect somewhat of a jump. And so for him able to sell that vision, sell the vision of the team after going 2-10 last year, sell the direction, I think is just massive. So I just want to give props to Phil Loadholt once again. I mean, he's doing a great job on the recruiting trail, and it's showing. So that's my top dog of the week. So thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out The Portal Show. Brian Smith has latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, I'm Jaron. Check out my work over at Athlon Sports. Landon will be back with us when we shoot tomorrow's episode. So we should be back to normal. Should be getting them at 6 a.m. every single morning this week in the future, unless something weird happens. But again, apologize. Thank you for understanding because it's obviously we don't like doing that. We don't like to get off schedule. So we apologize once again. Also, hit that like, subscribe, ring the bell on YouTube. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We will get back to posting daily videos Monday through Friday. Not sure we're going to be able to do it today. Again, my first day back, full day back. I got some stuff I got to catch up on to be prepared to go back to work tomorrow. And then going to try to get some kind of sleep today because we've been, so jet lagged. So, but yes, thank you guys so much for understanding. And yeah, we're looking forward to practice starting and getting back into the flow of doing the podcast every day. So until next time, Hail State.